Yeah. Sorry, we got theme music, buddy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
it's well, we got theme music, and we're looking for a new theme apparently because. That's someone's watching me. Pretty clever, right? But anyway, if you got, while we're doing the podcast, Peter, if you got any new ideas for a theme song, like we're looking.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, we're here doing a podcast, BSides. Peter Smetny, maybe name, rank, and serial number. Tell us what brings you here.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Peter Smetny. I work at Fortinet. I'm SE director there. I've been at Fortinet for 14 years, so
Wow.
It's changed a lot since I started. But a lot of the things I like about it haven't changed. The innovation, what I love about security and what keeps me in the security space. Why I like events like BSides as well. And this year is a little bit of a challenge because BSides and Sector are at the same time, so
Right.
I had to try to manipulate to get to both because you can't have two.
That's
two
code for Peter's flying from place to place. He's one of those guys.
Yeah. So, but security's it's the only field really where you actually have an adversary, right? You actually are dealing with an adversary.
Right.
Every other field in IT, there's lots of innovation. Innovation's driven by features, by requirements, by business requirements. But this is the only place you actually have an actual adversary that's a human adversary using tools, tactics to that you have to defend against, right? So it's something that's really exciting. It drives innovation in a different way as well.
So I started explaining that to people about the CISO versus CIO is like bowling versus baseball. You're pitching strikes, but there's a dude trying to hit, and he's cheating, and he could run at you. It's a very different how you pitch in baseball versus how you just keep hitting the strike in bowling are two very different jobs.
Mm-hmm. Very different jobs. And in cyber, it's like you have 4 pitchers pitching at you at the same time.
A lot of people cheat.
Yeah.
Asymmetric. Well put.
Yeah.
Well put. So next question. Yeah. Why BSides, and what do you think so far? I know you jet set it in. You've had maybe a day to land.
Yeah. No. I got here as soon as I could this morning and spent as much time taking in the show. And what I've always liked about BSides, we've been supporting BSides. I've been attending BSides for many, many years now. And what's great about it is that mix of, it's not just about you have the content, you have the presentations for sure, you get a lot out of those. There's a lot of great speakers, but because you also have, the villages, the hacking villages, and now the hack the box for people kind of just getting into it, it also, provides that completely different experience where you actually get to experience it, and test your skills, and it draws a different group of people as well. Right. So there's a great mix of people that have a lot of hands-on, a lot of first-hand knowledge, and to me, that's the way it's a great way to learn, right? Learning from hearing experts talk about things and conceptual learning, but then combined with the ability to actually, get your hands on the keyboard and everything. I get yelled at sometimes at Fortinet because I still like to get my hands on the keyboard, and they're like, well, you shouldn't do that as much anymore. And I don't do it as much anymore, but I still do because I think it keeps it real, right? For you need that aspect. It gives you an understanding that's different than just hearing about something.
I was about to. Steve's more the blue team, cyber AR hands dirty guy, but I say the same thing as you. Is even if you're a CISO or head of a SOC, you gotta go top floor to shop floor. You don't have to be awesome down there, but you better go down there and try this stuff to understand how to do your job. It's just not a job where you can be hierarchical.
Exactly, for sure. And having that understanding, seeing, and it keeps you kind of in the changing landscape, right? The techniques are changing. So you have to know, you have to understand. A big thing about being a CISO, I guess, and protecting the enterprise is it's intelligence-driven threat defense, right? So it's really hard or almost impossible to just protect against everything holistically, patch everything holistically. Just the world's not like that. You have too many systems, too much change, too much innovation.
Business has to run too,
business
right?
has to run, and everybody. So like and CISO is an enabler of the business. That's the mindset. You can't be the one that's saying no, because that's not going to work, right?
I agree.
If you're not moving forward and enabling the business, they're either going to find workarounds that are worse than what you're going to put in place, right? Or they're just you're not going to get the budget, going to be irrelevant.
You made me think of something, and I know we've worked together. It's the same concept of, okay, security is a business enabler. I'm not going to get the money to just shut down the castle. The flip side too is I need help from my suppliers. Like, we're in this together, because we get breached. I go, I'm in trouble, but so's the brand of Fortinet, right? We've got to kind of go private-public partnership to go, we're not going to win all the time. And that one of us fails, we both fail.
Yeah.
So there's the concept of, it's humbling. We were talking to Pen Test before. It's a humbling space, because that. And so then you start to go, we should have a coalition of the willing here, because we're going to be in this together, explaining why there's a breach, what you could do to mitigate it, what, you've only got so much money, and what's the business value of this? Well, we got to work together, right?
Yeah.
It's not
and that's intelligence driven, right? Like, that's all the ISACs out there, because if you're not sharing,
right?
Like, that's because I'm trying to think how long ago this was. But before, I dove into FS-ISAC 8 years ago. But back when I first met you, so when you were pretty much just starting at Fortinet, and I was at Bell, nobody shared anything. So there was no intelligence. Like, there was, but it was never shared, right? So it was like IOCs from one vendor would be different from IOCs from another vendor, because this is my IP.
It's
and
competitive
it's like,
advantage.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's like, that's not cool. But since intelligence driven, like analytics, defending, responding, since that's become a thing, it's crazy how much information you can get. And you guys have your own feed too, right?
We do have our own feed, and to your point, Fortinet was one of the founders of Cyber Threat Alliance, and the other partners in it, Palo Alto, Checkpoint, like they're
your competitors,
right? But like in this space, we're working together because sure, we want to have better engines, better technology, but that's where we're competing against. We're not competing against the data that we should be sharing amongst ourselves, right? So we are sharing. That alliance has grown. It's probably at 30 members now.
Wow.
There's so much. The world has evolved as well, and from a better perspective in terms of not just the vendors, security vendors sharing IOCs, but in terms of breach disclosure for customers. Like, before, people wouldn't disclose their breaches either, right? Like, nobody better know that we're going to just. Vendors also did not really disclose CVEs that were internally found. Like, let's only disclose the ones we really have to. Right now our policies, 80% of our CVEs that were disclosed last year from Fortinet were internally found.
Wow.
But we'd still disclose them, because customers that potentially could be affected by them should know that we patched something or fixed something, right?
Yeah, it's a trust game, right?
And that helps drive better practices internally, right? Because some people, scream from the rooftops, oh my God, there's another RCE in Fortinet. But if it's Fortinet saying, hey, we found an RCE and we've patched it, this now informs your patch management, your vulnerability management processes. So it shouldn't be a surprise, but also it helps you, like, from an organizational perspective, really understand, was I ready for this? And how can I be ready for the next time? And then it helps you build, like, because oftentimes people say, well, my Fortinet, or like my core firewall, whatever it might be, I can't turn that off. It's like, well, you have two. Don't you know how to, like, update one and then fail over and then update the other one? Like, but there's this, it's funny because it's risk aversion from, I don't want the business to stop running, but what if something happens and then the business stops running not by my hand and I can't fix it? And that's where, like, having organizations like yours come forward and say, we have these problems, call us. Like, we'll help you get there. If you're not ready to get there, we'll help you get there, because you have to. And that's where everyone, whether it's vendor or whether it's even internal, that's where everyone has to get to a point where the IT team trusts the security team trusts the vendors,
right?
And so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So,
again, back to that threat intelligence driven defense and where you allocate your resources as well. We looked at, we have a report that shows how many CVs come out in a year, and the number is astronomical, right? But
Mm.
then what percentage of those CVs are actually actively exploited
Yeah.
that we've seen, and then what percentage of those CVs actually apply to your organization, right? So we try to make it very clear when there's a CVE on a FortiGate device, like, hey, yeah, there's a CVE, but it only affects you if you're using this cloud service,
Yeah.
which,
Mhm.
or it only affects you if you're not following our best practices, such as exposing admin access through the internet, right?
Yeah.
That's
So try to really limit, and so where you're going to be focusing your defenses.
it's the business neighbor. The CEO wants to know the risk priority. I got
Yeah.
20,000 problems.
You're not
but-
going to patch 20,000
Yeah.
CVEs in a.
And some of
Yeah.
them they don't apply to me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and so all of a sudden you people are pushing a CISO dashboard looks a lot more like a CEO dashboard.
Yeah.
I got lots of risks in this business, Carl. Cyber's one of them. But can you rank them for me and tell me
Yeah.
critical or?
Exactly. And meanwhile, what percentage of breaches actually start with a CV?
Yeah.
Except for, say,
Mhm.
Move It was a big one. It was a
Yeah.
huge one,
Yeah.
chain. But the vast majority, you look at MGM, Code Cov, like LastPass, all of those are breaches that were started with social engineering and password compromise, right?
I would
Password
agree.
compromise is still like the biggest thing.
Credentials and
What they say, hackers don't hack in, they log in.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've always said that too.
100%,
Is why be an APT? Like, you don't need to be a criminal mastermind. Insider threat, social engineering. If you're a bad guy, and I would do it too, easiest path. I'm not trying to be exotic in
Yeah.
how I get in. So if I don't have to, I'm gonna go stealing people's credentials or buying them on the dark web, or like you said, hiding in plain sight. I'm already an employee. I've already worked my way in. I don't need to hack.
Exactly. And the biggest thing, like organizations, there's like MFA and there's MFA, right? Like an SMS MFA is better than nothing, but for your guys, your key guys that have, like, when they log
Yeah.
in, they can access
Privileged access, guys.
privileged access guys like that have the master keys, master passwords, which also should be rotated, and there should be controls around those. But there's guys that have higher level access than
Mhm.
your average Joe. Like, those guys should have FIDO. Maybe they should have a
Yeah.
hardware token, or at least a token that you can't just port out and get SMS somewhere else, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
It's the graduated ruthlessness, the whole least privilege concept of, you got 10 people in your company, and I hate to say it, sysadmins and security people,
Yeah.
that have the master keys. Those are the guys that should have the fifth and sixth layer of surveillance and MFA. It's the same as a bank. I go, well, who's got keys to the vault?
exactly.
Those
Those are the
yeah.
guys that we're going to go after. If the
Yeah.
guys that have the keys to the
Yeah,
vault.
you're not going to drill through it, right? You're
Yeah.
not going to drill the lock. You're
Yeah.
going to find the key.
And the attackers are sophisticated, and there's so much information on LinkedIn, and I know they can find pretty easy who's the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then start throwing my resources at that one guy, which makes it pretty hard. So you can't. The process can't rely on that guy not being susceptible to phishing or
Yep.
to social
He's a
engineering.
human, he's a human being.
He's a human being. The system has to be assumed that he's going to get compromised. What happens then? How do I prevent a big breach? And there's technologies there, like, we talk about zero trust a lot, but for example, if I'm the guy and I live in Seattle and I'm the guy I have master keys, how come I'm logging in from like Europe?
It's
and right away that shouldn't be allowed.
It's Carl, he's the backup guy, but he's in Vegas.
Yeah, like-
What's
Yeah.
going on?
It's like, yeah, like,
And yeah, that's 100%. But that's like, from an intelligence perspective, that's such a lack of internal intelligence. That,
Well put.
like, everything has a log, right? Everything has a log. I mean, you look like a platform like yours, which has everything from the endpoint to the cloud. There's a lot of, like, you can follow a trail, right? And like, I know of very few places that are, I'm going to look at your location when you log in, not just your user ID and password, but where are you coming from? Like, you shouldn't even be allowed to log in because it doesn't make any sense. And a lot of the times the protections aren't in place because everyone's afraid this is going to stop business from running. So at least have a detection, right? But oftentimes it's just not there. It's not something people think about, because the logical thing is, well, what if they pop a vulnerability? What if we get malware? And it's like, yeah, but what if, like, assume that, yes, that's going to happen because someone's going to open an attachment they shouldn't. But what happens next? Like, if they're coming in through a proxy from anywhere besides, the hometown, that should be flagged at the very least, right? So
should be flagged for sure. I mean, those things sometimes make life a little bit more difficult, but it makes total sense. It doesn't. It's for example, for me, like at Fortinet, we've deployed zero trust architecture. Obviously, it's our product, so it's easier to deploy. We deployed it when before COVID happened. Nobody could develop anything for FortiUS or any of our products without being in the office. Obviously, COVID, like we have to figure something out. Zero trust we were working on, so that was like the first rollout, and it has been gradually rolled out across the organization, right? And for example, if I'm in Toronto visiting my sister and I want to log into an internal system, I didn't bring my laptop. I have my two-factor token. I have my username and password. I can get through that stage, but then it's like, sorry, zero trust. This laptop, I don't know what this laptop is. It's not. So identity is not just about who. It is who's for sure, but like what device, where, when, right? Those things all fit in together. And if you have those pieces together, then it's really hard. Even if I do a phishing attack, bypass your MFA.
I get some, but not all.
You're not gonna I now have to steal your laptop or your FIDO token. There's a lot more steps that I can't do without being like really.
And you're halfway through, right? Like the whole thing when you're a bad guy in Ocean's 11 is not getting detected. You got 7 stages, and if you're stuck at stage 3, you go back out. Like you can't hang around there.
Exactly.
It's a good point about fine grain policy enforcement. It's several locks. I wanted to.
You said something. I think you were mentioning the attacker only has to be right once, right? But that's not exactly the case in my view, because he has to be right assuming you have the right security posture, it shouldn't be just one thing he gets and he's in all the way. And even in these compromises, right, you can see it takes sometimes it takes weeks or months, because it is a lot of things. You get in, you get one guy's thing, then you have to move laterally. You have to detect the organization. So you're not just right once. You're right a whole bunch of times. Right?
It's not all or none. It's none or some. But some is like, okay, well I still can't get to the crown jewels, and I'm kind of exposed, and this is frustrating. And how many more questions is this guy going to ask me? I'm sure you're thinking that, but I wanted to pivot on the. Like where you coming from kind of comment was a little bit about career path, and kind of wanted to understand your origin story. So like 14 years Fortinet, director SE, that's a hell of a run.
Yeah, it's a long time.
How did it start? How did you get in there? And 2, like if you were giving advice to newbies, how do you crack the lineup? A, B, how do you become the next Peter Smetny?
So I mean, I didn't start out in network security. My first job right out of university, I was choosing between Cisco and Nortel networking. I chose the Canadian company, and then the year after that, I was looking for another job because it was 2001. But
every time someone says Nortel, I go, "What year?" And I came in 83, and I turned 40 when. But these people that are younger, and I go, "Ooh, like around 2000." Yeah, if only you knew it.
It was fun. It was great. But then right after that, I went to CGI. A lot of Nortel people went to CGI. And I started networking there, and they were having a hard time to find somebody that did any security, that knew firewalls, and I was doing the networking stuff, and the networking stuff was good, it was okay, but they asked me to start playing with it a little bit, and I found that really interesting, because now I'm like, oh, now this is where I can actually see what's happening, where people are going, what flows are important to the business, what's happening, and I'm like, this is interesting. This is way funner than configuring VLANs and VLAN ACLs and stuff. So, and then what really got me into it, they're like, okay, I see you started to kind of get this PICS thing. We have a bunch of customers that come to us and they say they're scared to put in the next firewall rule because they don't even understand. I'm like, well, this is complex. So I started going in and trying to figure out people's security policies. I'm like, how are people building these things? This is, if you don't understand your own firewall rule set and you're scared to put in a rule because it's going to break everything, that's back when our networks were way simpler, right? There was just the perimeter. So there
was no application inspection or anything like that.
That's the dirty little secret, though, of the client is we don't know. Like, we've lost track of all our rules. We just keep piling them on. I mean, it's like a game of kerplunk, and we're pulling a pin and hoping nothing bad happens, right?
A game of grenades, pulling a pin, hoping nothing bad happens.
So it became, it was really interesting. And I got to to see a lot of different ways people are thinking about security, because it was all different companies how they build it, but there was a lot of challenges there. And then this company I never heard of said, hey, we do firewalls, we do network security, next generation kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, well, I work with Checkpoint, I work with Cisco,
right.
you know, because they wouldn't, you know how it works with recruiting, they don't tell you the name of the company, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, you'll meet the guy.
Headhunting, yeah.
So I meet the guy, and he's like, yeah, I work at Fortinet. I'm like, Fortinet? It's like, yeah, we make firewalls. I'm like,
Never
okay.
heard of
I've
you.
never heard of you. But like, but the story sounded really good, because it's like the things I was seeing, the challenges I was seeing, were with just layer 4 security and all these other things you had so many different tools you needed at the perimeter, just at the perimeter. I'm not even talking about endpoint or other places, to be able to address all the aspects.
It was a toolkit, not a platform.
Exactly, and this was the first one I saw. Like, yeah, no, we do IPS, we do AV, we do web filtering on one. I'm like, that's like, I saw the challenges customers had by just having those 5 different products. I'm like, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Like, it makes so much sense to simplify.
It's
As long
funny
as all
'cause that's
those
the brand,
functions
right?
work, then
It's just weird that's your brand's fabric. Like, Fortinet brand is fabric, but always up and coming.
Yeah.
Like, there's some big network companies, and we're coming, and every year Fortinet would bigger, better, but kind of integrating.
Yeah. And like the biggest thing, you know, to secure your network, and now, you know, we haven't even touched on the AI. That's a huge thing, but you know, if you look at AI, it's data driven, and the one thing you have more of, hopefully, than your attackers, that you actually understand, hopefully understand your architecture, your applications, your flows, your, you know, how things are segmented. And that data, if you now feed it to AI, it can help you a lot more. The attackers are also using AI, but they don't have any of, hopefully, have the level of data. So
you got home field advantage.
You have home field
even
advantage.
if you're, like, I always say this to people, never mind network, in your own house, there's a burglar, he's got a gun, it's scary, but it's your house. With the lights out, you know a lot of stuff they don't. Hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully. So you should use that to your advantage. And what I was seeing is, because there's all these different pieces, nobody actually, even when it was a simple perimeter, they didn't even understand what their policy is at the perimeter, because some of it was going through the IPS, some of it was going through a secure web gateway, some of it was going through firewall, like, and they were all different. Policies were completely different. So it was really hard to say, hey, what is my actual policy at this perimeter, right?
Wow.
So that's how I got into, and I really, like, you know, as it keeps evolving, more pieces come onto that, and I know it's great. So I think if you have, you know, if you have, it's something that requires passion. There's a lot of work in security, and I find it's super interesting because of that adversarial aspect, because things are changing so fast. Like, you know, now we have cloud, now we have AI. So, like, you know, we've had ML. I'm using AI as a broad term. I mean, we've had ML in security for a long time, right? And then advanced neural networks as well. But now generative AI is playing a bigger role to be kind of like a force multiplier for your SOC, right? Because humans are great at certain things, we're not great at big data. You know, like, that's not our thing. So use the tool for what it's for. It's not going to replace your job. And the one challenge with AI is that it's good at predictive, but it's opaque.
Yeah.
Nobody understands how it came to the prediction it came to, because you can't. It correlated billions of data points mathematically and came out with a prediction, which the predictions tend to be accurate, but when they're not, you don't know why they're not. So there are some
and it's still a lead, right? It's not a conclusion, it's a lead, and you have to dig in.
Right. Yeah. And it's great, like, you know, I'm an analyst, alerts come in, it looks through them, tells me, hey, these are the ones you should look more into, right? Instead of looking at 20,000 alerts, these are the ones that, based on all the different things and what we've learned in the past, this is the ones that you really should worry about and focus on.
That's I used to from UEBA, but the leads thing is, you still need the smart person to close the deal. This is the usual suspects, but to your point, because it's opaque, there's no bias. So the problem with I call them the RCMP guys with the big mustaches is they follow their nose and they go, motive means opportunity. We already think these guys are the bad guys, and we work backwards. AI goes the other way and goes, you should go after these people are persons of interest. I'm not saying I figured out who it is. I'm just saying you should start here. And if you're the cop, you should go after these guys as leads and confirm. But don't you be coming up with the leads because you're flawed. You have biases or whoever you caught last time, that's the person you're just going to intuitively go look for. So it's interesting about the opaqueness. It's not a neutral. It's like, I know, subjective, objective, Bayesian, blah blah blah. But the point being, because it's opaque, you just get fed a list of people that figures out the needle in the haystack in a way that a human couldn't.
Yeah, and it's going to obviously lead to a new generation of attack vectors where I'm going to try to make it biased in the way I want it to be biased, right? I want to feed it. I want to poison the data, right?
Poison the data or social engineer the AI.
Yeah.
You're right.
So-
Or if you can create enough of a smoke screen, so that 20,000 events don't mean anything, but it's still analyzing.
Yeah.
Hide in plain sight, slow and low. It'll the
Then of course you have the
techniques will
algorithms
change.
that pick out the outliers.
And exactly,
But-
that's why cyber's fun, because it's always,
Yeah.
you won't be bored, that's for sure.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Like you said, AI is not going to solve it. It's just going to change the game.
Yeah.
It's a good point. But the game is afoot because there's an adversary, even with AI. That's an interesting like. It's a win and a loss as a career path, right? Like it's why I'm hanging around. It's because it's exciting, because the game's never going to be over. On the other side, you gotta keep moving.
Gotta keep moving,
You gotta keep moving.
Infinite game, they call it. Right?
Yeah. So if that's not something you're into, like the continuous learning, then
I'm with you.
Yeah. So that's a really good segue into our final question. Is when you like hearing about your career path, where the future's going. When people come up to you and say, "Well, how do I get into this? Like, how do I become you?" You know, that constant learning is obviously a part of it. But what advice do you generally give to people trying to break in or trying to improve, like trying to up their game?
So I mean, I think you need to be a curious person. It's good to have curiosity. There's school, there's formal learning. Obviously, that's important as well. But a lot of this stuff, right? Like you gotta have an interest, and you gotta be, I didn't do software development, but like that wasn't my career path, but like I picked up a lot of things like doing Python, understanding those things. Yeah, I'm not saying you have to be a software developer,
right.
But it's great to understand and be able to use Python, and now I think AI is becoming very important. So reading books, understanding at least at a high level how it works, how it can help you, what advances are coming. Like there's people like you can go into ChatGPT today and get results out of it, but actually understanding how it's working in the background, how prompting can help, what kind of prompts work, those things allow you to become
Prompt engineering
a lot more
be a career,
competent
right?
at using that tool, and it's going to be a tool, and you want to
That's
be
interesting. You're not
competent in those ways.
becoming an app developer. You're re-engineering a language.
Yeah.
Because you're afraid someone's going to hack it. It's a off the books curiosity.
Yeah. And then depends where you want to be in that business path, that career path as well, because the business side I think is very important. Understanding business, I think depending where you get, like as the CISO, then you're going to be talking to the board, and those are business discussions, right? You got to be able to quantify the risk and the information at a business level. So I think a good understanding, like my son just went into university, right? So it's kind of that's what I was guiding him on. So now he went and he's at the business school doing it's a business technology management. So it has some
combo.
It has exactly. So to me I think that was a great choice. And it doesn't just apply to cyber. I mean, just in the world, right? A combination of business knowledge, understanding, and technology, because technology is just like that's going to give you so many opportunities, right?
Yeah. STEM alone gets you the job, but STEM plus business makes you the god.
Yeah.
Like if you
Once
want
you
to
understand your contribution, right? Once you know,
Right.
and that's one thing that it
Right.
took me a bit in security, because I worked for an MSS, right, where you did stuff because you're supposed to do stuff, but you don't think about what impact does this have. And once I got out of there and actually working in an organization as a security engineer, it's like, oh, so if I do this, which I know is the most secure, that hurts feelings because it makes these people less productive or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, so I have to find a balance, and that's not something.
It's
It's
not
something that should be taught first, but it's not, right? So,
It's it's not all about follow the money, but you should understand where you are in a pecking order and what's of value and what's not.
And if you're not, the value for the company is ultimately providing value to customers who pay them so they can make the money. And if you're impeding that, if you don't have that business acumen, then you're really all you're saying is no, we have to block everything.
Yeah.
And then they're like, dude, come on, the business has to
Right.
run, so
Exactly.
like you gotta take a hike.
Yeah. And I think it goes in both directions, right? So you want the security guys to understand the business, they understand what the purpose of the business is, how it makes money, how it's successful, and understand the day-to-day flows of like your clients, which are the employees, right? What are they doing day to day, and how do you implement the security in a way that's not super difficult for them, right?
Mhm.
So like understand their flow. But on the other
100%.
side, I think everybody in the business should understand that security doesn't own the risk. The business owns the risk
Yes.
in the end. It's like not security's job. We don't own the risk, right? In
Yeah.
security, it's the business owns the risk,
Yeah.
and we're there to work with you to
Yeah.
reduce that risk. So
Yeah.
everybody in the organization is part of security, right?
Amen.
That's a
Yeah.
brilliant back at you. Like it's security as a business enable is just a smart thing to say about business and ROI, but it's, by the way, like I'm not going to own the risk, right? It's a trade-off here. Security is business enabler, but I'm going to bring the risk back, and it's business risk, and that's the not to deal with the devil, but that's the whole point about understanding STEM and business is
Yeah.
you know, I'm not just going to go wear this. I'm not going to be the troll under the bridge that scares you,
No.
but I'm also not going to wear it.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And you may be the software development that's building our platform that we sell. You own the business risk. Your team does too. If things go bad, it impacts your ability
Yeah.
to bring home.
Doesn't just hurt me.
Yeah, exactly.
I get it. The CISO falls on his sword, but it's usually existential to the business,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
100%.
Is that a close?
I think that's probably a
Oh,
wrap.
my music.
Yeah, I can't close that without that.
Yeah. Awesome. I really appreciate the time, Peter. That
Yeah,
was
no, it's great. Thank you
good
very much.
conversation. Probably the most sober conversation I've had with you in a few years.
Yeah, that's true.
Take
Do
that
not
out.
challenge him on vodka. I'll just point that out. I think our segues are getting awesome, right? Like how we
Yeah, yeah.
segue now.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Are we starting to get good or what?
Oh, yeah.
Here, I'll just turn that off.